Most people hurried past with umbrellas, gripping their jackets tight and never once glancing toward the places where the forgotten hid from the world. But at the far end of the alley, behind a stack of damp cardboard and a rusted grocery cart, a homeless woman named Clara sat curled around the only warmth she had left, a trembling brown and white puppy she had found 2 nights earlier inside an abandoned lot. She hadn't eaten anything except half a sandwich someone had tossed her way that morning, but when she saw the puppy shivering in the cold, ribs visible and eyes too tired for a creature so young, she didn't think twice before tucking him into her coat. If she had to choose between starving or letting the pup freeze, she would give him every last scrap of food she found. That was who Clara was, broken in many ways, but unshakably gentle. The puppy's tiny breaths puffed against her collarbone as she held him close. She whispered softly to him, repeating the same words she'd said since finding him, "You're safe with me, little one. I promise." She didn't know who she was trying to convince, the pup or herself. Because deep inside, Clara carried the fear that she wasn't enough. Not enough to save him, not enough to change her own life, not enough for the world that had pushed her to the margins and forgotten she existed. But the puppy didn't know any of that. He just knew her heartbeat. He trusted her. The storm grew heavier, and Clara adjusted the thin blanket around the dog. Her fingers were numb from the cold, but she didn't care. What she did care about, however, was the sudden echo of footsteps, heavy, unsteady, and far too familiar. She had heard footsteps like that before, many times, from people who wandered the streets looking for trouble, entertainment, or someone weaker to take their anger out on. She pressed her back against the wall and cradled the puppy even tighter, trying to make herself small. 3 figures appeared from the street, men in hoodies, their laughter sharp and cutting. They weren't drunk, just cruel. They had seen her before. They liked to find reasons to harass her, to call her names, to shove her cart over so her few belongings scattered into puddles. They enjoyed making life worse for someone who already had almost nothing. "Well, look who's here," one of them sneered, stepping closer. Homeless Clara and her trash pile. Clara didn't respond. She'd learned silence was safer. Another man jabbed his finger toward the puppy's head poking out of her coat. "You got a dog now. Since when do homeless people get pets?" "It's just a stray," Clara whispered, shielding the puppy with her arms. "Let me see it," the man demanded. "No," Clara said softly but firmly. The word, no, flipped a switch in them. They hated boundaries. They hated being told they couldn't take something. The tallest thug stepped forward and kicked her cart hard, knocking it over with a loud crash. Her blanket, socks, old food wrappers, and a cheap plastic bowl rolled across the wet alley. "Give us the dog," he snarled. Clara stood her ground, even though she was shaking. "He's cold. He's scared. Please don't." She didn't get to finish. The man kicked her in the side, sending her sprawling onto the concrete. The puppy yelped as Clara curled over him, refusing to let him go even as a second kick struck her back. Pain exploded through her ribs. The men laughed. "Come on, just take the dog," one of them shouted, but Clara didn't move. She covered the puppy with her entire body, bracing for the next blow. That was when a new sound cut through the storm, the steady, purposeful footsteps of someone who didn't belong in an alleyway at midnight. Someone who didn't hesitate. Someone who walked like he had seen situations far worse than this and wasn't afraid of any of them. The men didn't hear him approach, but Clara did. She glanced up and saw a tall figure emerging from the rain, his stance straight, his jaw clenched, and his eyes sharp with a focus that commanded attention. He wore a simple dark jacket and jeans, but his presence alone was enough to send a chill through the alley. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating his face just long enough for Clara to recognize the expression, not anger, but controlled fury. "Back away from her," the man said, his voice low and deliberate. The thugs turned. "Who the hell are you?" one snapped. The stranger stepped closer. "Someone you don't want to find out about." The men laughed. "You think you're tough, old man." He didn't answer with words. His body moved before they even finished their sentence. Within seconds, fast, silent, and precise, he disarmed the nearest man by twisting his arm behind his back and pinning him against the wall. The second thug charged forward, but the stranger sidestepped, grabbed him by the hoodie, and sent him tumbling into a stack of metal dumpsters. The third tried to swing at him. A single punch to the stomach dropped him to his knees, gasping for air. The entire fight lasted less than 10 seconds. The men scrambled to their feet and ran, cursing and slipping in the rain as they disappeared down the street. None of them dared look back. Clara blinked through the downpour, stunned. The stranger turned to her, not with the harsh expression he had used moments before, but with gentleness that almost startled her. "You're hurt," he said, kneeling beside her. "Are you all right?" Clara tried to sit up, but pain shot through her ribs, and she winced. "I'm okay. I had to protect him." The stranger's eyes softened as he noticed the puppy shaking inside her coat. "You did good," he said quietly. "Really good." Clara swallowed hard, emotions flooding her all at once. Fear, relief, exhaustion, gratitude. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Name's Ethan," he replied, offering his jacket to drape over her shoulders. "I used to be a Navy SEAL." Clara stared at him, stunned. She had heard stories about SEALs, about their strength, discipline, courage, but she had never imagined meeting one in a dark alley, let alone having one save her life. Ethan noticed the hesitation in her eyes and gave her a reassuring smile. "You're safe now," he said. He helped her sit upright. The puppy peeked out from inside her coat, ears twitching, eyes wide. Ethan reached out slowly, giving the dog time to sniff him first. "Hey, little guy," he said softly. "You've had a rough night, haven't you?" The puppy wagged his tail faintly, drawn to Ethan's calm voice. Clara watched the interaction, tears gathering in her eyes. No one had treated her gently in a long, long time. Not since before her life had fallen apart, before she lost her job, then her apartment, then everything else she had once depended on. She wasn't used to strangers caring. She wasn't used to kindness. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly. Ethan looked at her as though the answer was obvious. "Because you mattered. Because he mattered. Because no one deserves to be treated like that." A single tear rolled down her cheek, mingling with the rain. Ethan stood, then reached down to help her up. "Come on," he said gently. "You can't stay out here. You need warmth, and that pup needs food." Clara hesitated. "I don't have money." "I didn't ask for money," Ethan replied. "Let me help." She wasn't used to accepting help, but her body hurt too much to argue. Ethan guided her out of the alley, shielding her from the rain with his jacket. As they walked, Clara quietly told him her story, how she had once worked as a nursing assistant, how she had lost her mother to illness, how the medical bills drowned her finances until she lost everything except her will to keep going. She told him about finding the puppy and realizing that for the first time in months, she felt needed again. Ethan listened without judgment. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer pity, just presence. When they reached a late-night diner, he opened the door for her and guided her to a booth. The warmth inside made Clara shiver as her body thawed from the cold. The waitress looked at her with concern, but Ethan stepped forward. "They had a rough night," he said quietly. "Can we get some soup and something soft for the puppy?" The waitress nodded sympathetically and hurried off. As they waited, Ethan took out a small first aid kit from his backpack. "I carry this everywhere," he said with a small smile. "Old habit." He gently cleaned a cut on Clara's cheek. She winced, but he worked with a steady, careful touch. The puppy lay curled beside her, already looking more relaxed. "You've been fighting alone for too long," Ethan said softly after a moment. "You don't have to anymore." Clara stared at him, overwhelmed. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Ethan paused, then said, "Because once, a long time ago, someone helped me when I was at my worst. I never forgot it, and tonight, maybe it was my turn to do the same for someone else." Tears filled Clara's eyes again, but this time they weren't from pain, they were from something she had forgotten how to feel, hope. They ate together in comfortable silence. When the meal was done, Ethan asked, "Do you trust me?" His voice was calm, respectful. "I want to help you and the pup. I can take you both to a shelter I work with. It's safe, warm, and they help people get back on their feet. No pressure, just an option." Clara looked down at the puppy resting peacefully against her lap. She thought about the alley, the cold, the pain. She thought about the men who had hurt her and the stranger who had saved her. She thought about how long she had survived by herself, and how tired she was. Finally, she nodded. Okay. Ethan smiled. Good. Let's get you both the help you deserve. The shelter was quiet and welcoming, with clean beds and warm lighting. The staff greeted Clara with genuine warmth, giving her fresh clothes, a hot shower, and a temporary room where she could sleep safely. The puppy was checked by a volunteer vet, who assured her he would be fine with rest and proper food. Before leaving, Ethan found Clara sitting on the bed, the puppy nestled beside her. You'll be all right here, he said. They'll help you find work, a place to stay, whatever you need. Clara nodded, her eyes soft with gratitude. Thank you, for everything. Ethan hesitated, then said, you risked your life for a helpless creature. Not many people would do that. You're stronger than you think. His words hit her deeply, because she had spent so long believing she was weak, useless, invisible. But tonight, a stranger had shown her that her kindness was not a flaw. It was her strength. Will I see you again? She asked quietly. Ethan smiled. I'll check in. Someone has to make sure that little guy grows up right. Clara laughed softly, the sound surprising even herself. When he left, she looked down at the puppy, who gazed up at her with trusting eyes. She stroked his head and whispered, we made it. We're going to be okay. And for the first time in a very long while, she believed it. Days turned into weeks. Clara worked with the shelter counselor, got a part-time job at a local cafe, and slowly began rebuilding the life she had lost. The puppy, now named Chance, grew stronger each day, becoming her constant companion. And true to his word, Ethan visited often. Sometimes he brought dog treats. Sometimes he brought advice. Sometimes he simply brought quiet company. Clara never forgot the night everything changed, the night she risked everything for a tiny, helpless life, and a Navy SEAL stepped in to show her that her life still had value. She learned that kindness could save more than one soul. It could save two. It could save many. And she learned that even in the darkest alley, a stranger's compassion could turn fear into hope, pain into healing, and a broken life into a new beginning. Because sometimes the smallest act of love, a woman shielding a puppy in the rain, can awaken the greatest act of humanity in someone else. And sometimes, that is enough to change everything.